President Trump, speaking of what we were just talking about a moment ago, there was a tweet that he posted last night. It said, Ed Gillespie worked hard but did not embrace me or what I stand for. Don't forget, Republicans won 4 out of 4 House seats. And with the economy doing record numbers, we will continue to win even bigger than before. Joining me now for analysis is Karl Rove, former senior advisor and deputy chief of staff for President George W. Bush and a Fox News contributor. Karl, what is your takeaway from last night's election? Let's start with Virginia.
Yeah. First of all, the big story here is that the turnout jumped dramatically from the last governor's race. 16% more voters turned out in this election than 4 years ago. That's 368,000. And they tended to come out in the suburbs, and they tended to be independents who didn't like Trump and Democrats who were enthusiastic about sending him a message. Alexandria City, 26% more votes. Arlington, another close-in Washington, D.C. suburb, 26% of the vote up. 23% up in Fairfax, the biggest voting jurisdiction in the state. 31% up in Loudoun County, another county just outside of Washington, D.C. And what was driving them was they didn't like President Trump. 40% of Virginians approved of President Trump's performance, 57% disapproved. But take a look at this. 20% strongly approved of President Trump's performance, 1 out of every 5 Virginians. But 47% of the state's voters, nearly 1 out of every 2, said they strongly disapproved of the president's performance, and 37% said they went to vote to send him a message, and that message kept a candidate who you and I both know. He's like a brother to me. It's amazing. He got 10,821 votes more than any other Republican candidate for governor. Bob McDonald, who was on earlier in the previous hour, won by 59% in 2009, but he got 11,000 fewer votes than Ed Gillespie got last night, and getting 45.1% of the vote. The president energized the turnout. People said, this is our chance to send him a message. If we're an independent, we don't like how he's acting. If we're a Democrat, we don't like what he's doing.
Well, then, does that just follow historical precedent then? Because what Bob McDonald was saying, that in 2009, when he won, that was the Republicans coming out to vote against President Obama.
Well, it is analogous, roughly analogous in that way. But look at 2013. Democrat Terry McAuliffe won, even though that was the year before the 2014 elections that were so strong for the Republicans. So it depends on what the president does to defang the opposition inside the state. And if you're a Republican, you start out with the Washington Post against you and those Northern Virginia suburbs watching very closely what's going on in the nation's capital. But look, this was an election in which President Trump was wrong. He said if Ed Gillespie had run closer to me and been closer to the White House, he would have done better. Trump got 88% of Republicans to vote for him in the state. Ed Gillespie got 95% of Republicans and won the independent vote. What happened is that the president drove the electorate, the presidential election year Democrats, out to vote in an off-year election when they might not have otherwise voted. This election, the Democrats had an 11-point advantage over the Republicans. Last fall, when President Trump lost the state by 5 points, the Republicans were down 7 points to the Democrats on the generic ballot, and in 2013, they were down by 5. So this is a pretty dramatic increase in the percentage of the Democrat advantage over Republican, and it's largely attributable to the fact people were angry at the president and willing to vote their convictions in doing so.
So if you could pull back out in the last minute that I have with you, do you think that this has any bearing on the 2018 midterms? We know in our experience, of course, when we worked together in Bush administration, it's very unusual for a president in the White House not to lose seats in the midterm elections. There's only like 3 exceptions since the Civil War. What do you think will happen?
Well, look, the White House party tends to lose seats. What would worry me is looking at the Virginia House of Delegates, which was up last night. The Republicans had a 66-34 advantage going into last night. They're going to be lucky to end up being 50-50 in the state House of Delegates, and most of the people who lost were incumbents who did what the president said, followed his program. to the T. And so we got to be very careful going into this election. The only good news is Ralph Northam is voted for George W. Bush twice. He's a physician, military veteran. He's exactly the kind of Democrat who could win votes from Republicans and independents. And he's not the kind of Democrat that that Democrats are inclined to nominate next year. He's not a Sandinista or a follower of Elizabeth Warren.
Oh, is that a new nickname? All right, Karl Rove, thank you so much.